All right, we are going to restore this old photograph brought to me by a client, and they would like me to do the best I can and bring it up as good as new. As you can see, it is rather aged. I don't know, there was no date on the back of this particular copy. It looks like it has suffered all manner of damage, including a lot of physical damage. We have giant chunks missing. We have a piece here cut completely clean. Well, not cut, torn completely not clean at all from the corner of this shot. And if we zoom in, we can see or not see that we are actually missing bits and pieces of people's faces. Now, just a brief moment about how I go about a retouch like this. A lot of this stuff we're not going to pull a ton of detail out of from the original print. I mean, you can see where the silver in the black and white print has begun oxidizing and you're getting this blue tone. We'll do our best with that. But also a lot of the detail in the background, after talking with my client and assessing their needs, they're not super concerned with, shadow detail. They don't need to know that, inside this garage they used whatever, planking that is to line the inside of the bay. So we'll use that. We'll do things like that to take some liberties and do the best we can to fill in the missing data, especially when it comes to the faces. In this area down in here, we have just a tiny bit of eyes here on this individual, and we have barely any detail in the mouth on this individual here, and missing, an entire quarter half of the face. We will do the best we can with it. It will require us to make some judgment calls and educated guesses. According to the client, these people are not someone that they know or are familiar with anymore, but they do want the image restored as best it can be, as just has a lot of family sentimental value. It's, any manner of reasons why anyone would want to restore an old photograph and hang on to something like this and keep at least the record and sometimes the memory inside the family. Then you get areas like this that are missing. I don't think anyone's super concerned with exactly which blades of grass pointed which way back when this image was taken. So we will take some other pieces from this photograph and use that to infer what we're trying to do. As well as the borders here, we could try to retain the borders, but I think that some of this is going to be corrected with just a nice quick crop, especially something like this here. So as long as we're not losing anything really of the people, we're going to probably just start there, make our lives a little bit easier. So to begin, this was scanned in at a very high resolution. I usually scan everything in at a high resolution, and then I can downsample based on what the client wants. I'm not going to be working on the full resolution file for the purpose of this video, mostly just because system resources. But if we go in 1:1 pixel ratio here, this is a high detail scan of maybe not the highest detail photograph. We have a lot of paper texture. You can see all through here, all this silver and all that. And we have, very little human detail that we've added. I mean, we can't discern any extra skin detail or anything like that in these shots. So it really was oversampled, but that's okay because it's better to start with more information and throw it out later rather than finding yourself sitting there going, God, I wish I just had a little bit more to work with or a little more detail to pull from source. So first thing I'm going to do, this is more for my own sanity. After we zoom it in, it's not what I wanted. First thing I'm going to do for my own sanity, so you can see actually this was only scanned in at about 400 pixels per inch, or at least was sampled to that resolution after scanning. But it gives us, a 16 by 20 based on that scan. So I'm actually going to probably leave it here. Sometimes you'll see this, I'll scan them at, 800 pixels per inch or dots per inch, depending on your scanner, or even higher if it's a very small image. But here we're going to leave it there, but I'm going to just bump it up to 300 just because, honestly, I kind of just want to see what it looks like. So I could get a 21 by 28 out of this. That would be way too much. That's not what the client's looking for. They're probably going to be getting somewhere in the ballpark of an 8 by 10. But this way, we can, if we need to, get way in to fill in cracks with the minimal amount of interpolation, probably using that word wrong, but a minimal amount of guesswork. So, we can pull from source areas much closer to the cracks and things like that. yeah, I mean, that's kind of that's the rundown. That's the pre-production, the setup here. So I guess let's dive in. Anything like this, you can approach it from multiple different ways. I'm going to actually start with this cutout corner down here, just because I want to, really. After that, you'll see me go around and fill in, the easier cracks and some of the, bang for your buck kind of stuff. If you're doing this for yourself and you have all the time in the world and you're reasonably skilled and comfortable in Photoshop and all that fun stuff, sky's the limit, get as detailed as you want. But when you're working for a client and basically they pay you for a set amount, if there's a set budget and you can only work up to a certain point within that budget, well, you have to kind of do your most dramatic results first. And also you need to prioritize who the person is in the picture. In this particular case, the client, she did not exactly know which one was her ancestor, but she knew that they were somewhere in this photograph. So that's why they kind of wanted, as best we can to get as much detail as we can out of this. I'm going to try to take this to be a pretty full restoration. It's sort of in exchange for being allowed to use her collateral for making this video. She did give me the okay to make the video. She does not know that I plan to actually take this all the way to completion, and kind of over deliver based on what her budget needs were. But I figure, thank you for letting me use this. So, she'll appreciate that. This isn't really meant to be a tutorial. I'm going to just be talking about my process, going to be talking about what goes into making something like this for a client. So first things first, I'm going to duplicate my layer. So as you go along, if you are intending this to be used as a tutorial of any kind, just going to have to pause and work backward on things, not really going to outline everything I'm doing as I'm going. But I will give you the basics. I will give you the quick and dirty rundown as to like what each step of the process is. Like in this particular case, I'm getting the highest contrast edge I can find so that this selection can go much more smoothly, I'm hoping. So if we set that as our white point, and some of this is going to be boring, so you'll see as I'm doing the voiceover and as I'm working on this, I will speed this video up and slow it down from time to time. Well, bring it back to real time. I'm not going to go slow-mo on you. Sorry. There's just a certain number of things, certain amount of steps that go into doing something like this. So just what we're going to be doing here is selecting out individual areas of, or we'll be cutting out this piece and duplicating a layer, moving it over, treating it like a puzzle, and then we'll fix the crack just like it's any other crack here in the image. Okay, so that'll work for this. Not too concerned with these areas over here right now. We'll trim those shortly anyway. But let's go ahead and refine this selection. That's pretty good overall. Again, we're going to be filling some of this in anyway. Slide this up through here. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident in that, pretty comfortable with it. So we'll hit OK, and we're going to go back to the full color, back to the normal layer. And we're going to put this, looks like this is our base layer. So that's one step. So now I want to go back to this channel. We're actually going to work back on our base layer. It's back to this channel. And I'm going to do the same thing, but I want to do it the opposite way. a lot of these moments there's going to be dead air. I'm going to use this dead air time to speed up the video because, again, you don't want to sit here and watch me painstakingly select each individual edge. I'm sure maybe you do. And that's great, and thank you, and I appreciate your enthusiasm. But for those of you who don't want to see it, which is probably a lot of you, and I don't blame you, I'm not going to make you sit through that. I like breathing new life back into these old images. And I mean, being a photo nerd, like anytime I can see any sort of unique stuff, like someone brings me a tintype or something similar, you know, like that kind of thing can really just sort of make my day, if I'm honest. All right, now enough of me rambling for a minute. Now here is a fun part. I don't know if it is the fun part, but trying to fill in these gaps. So I'm trying my best to line this portion of the arm up. Looks like we did a pretty decent job here. Our selection's not half bad. The leg looks fairly well lined up. It's very faint. I don't know how this is going to translate to you guys, but you know, I have this really semi-dark line here. That looks pretty good. Even this little fold and wrinkle kind of lines up here. You know, it would be really nice to be able to get her face to line up a little better. So let's see if we can't just maybe bring this side up. Oops. I know we just started, but let's zoom out, check our progress. It doesn't really look like we made much. Let's see if I can't get that a little closer then. See, this head bothers me. I mean, this could be the shadow, but then this, I don't know if this lines up. It could, but that crack makes it really hard to tell. I could make it line up, I guess. See, that doesn't line up now, though. So I think this needs to be nudged over. Line that up. See, and then we've just got a big gap here. That doesn't really line up. I'm going to reset this. Yeah, I don't like the rotation. I think I prefer it straight. I did my best lining it up on the scan bed when I scanned it, so that may just be as far as we get with this. Okay, so I saved a copy of my background. It's here. So as a result, I'm just going to merge these, and that way I can work on them as one layer. And actually what I could do is I could work on filling these things in from behind as much as I could work on filling them in from over top. I may do that. So let's keep working on our crack here. New layer. Let's do tear, fill in. Let's call it behind. Okay, corner, we're reading this layer. We're going to do merged just because I know it's my merged copy, my merged base layer for right now. All right, we're going to come here. We're going to do this. Grab clone stamp tool. Turn this up a little bit. Well, that's good. Set my hardness to be a bit higher than that. Start there. And current and below. Current and below might not work. Let's see. Let's see if I can sample what's above it and actually get somewhere. I cannot. So I need to do this over top, unfortunately. But then I can put it behind, so that's okay. I'm gonna work around the faces for right now. Again, bang for your buck time-wise here. So let's just get some of this filled in. And probably shrink this just a little bit, get it closer to the edges of the crack. I want to do my absolute best to not overwrite too much of the existing image. I mean, a little bit of that's going to happen, sort of inevitable. But anytime I can work on like just the empty gaps, I will try. And then, like I said, we will use sort of our judgment and best guesses to fill in the rest of the information. It can be a little tricky. Really, that's something you clear up with your client. I will say that I have seen some people who only do restoration. That is their, or at least that's their sole, their sole income. That's their sole focus. These people will make these incredibly complex masks and things to make sure they're only working on the empty spaces in the image. And that is absolutely incredible and something that I have tried. And for certain projects, when something demands extreme accuracy, I will do it. But most of my clients, and this is where communication is key, most of my clients really just kind of trust that I'll do a decent job, or they bring in a reference. A lot of times it'll be, an old relative or something, and they'll say, well, I have, this image of, my dad or somebody, or, my mother, and, maybe you can use this to fill in some facial features or to fill in, some of the gaps, or at least as reference. But a lot of times that's not really the case. I mean, a lot of times people are spending the money with me because this is it. This is what they have. And, I try my best to respect their memory and respect the history of the photograph. But I mean, inevitably you can't make something from nothing. So I do have to make some judgment calls. So far, no complaints. So I guess no news is good news. And again, you make that judgment call also based on what's really relevant. And that's where communication comes in. I'm going to keep harping on that. It's not fully up to me to decide what's relevant and what's not relevant unless my client says they trust me, and then I can just make that call. But a lot of times that's why you communicate with your client. They don't care, like I said, if they get every blade of grass pointing the exact same direction as they were the day this image was shot. I mean, would it be nice? Sure. As you can see, it doesn't exist anymore. So we're doing the best we can. And really a lot of what we're doing, we're telling the story of that day. We're restoring the story of that day. We are trying to preserve that narrative, and we can get it pretty good. We can get it pretty close. But I find this is a little bit more on the philosophy end. But I find that ultimately time degrades everything, including our memory of an event. And that's without going into manipulation and things like that. So, I figure if we can get something that's as close as possible to the original, then that's a pretty damn good job, and I'm happy with it. And again, as long as the client's happy too, which maybe you're thinking about becoming a client, and just know that I want you to be happy as best I can. So yeah, that's why I work hard to try to establish where the boundaries are. I have found that, for myself, fortunately, I haven't run into too many issues yet. Okay, this is going to get tricky because I am going to need to fake an ear and fake an eyeball, corner of an eyeball at least. If you look, I mean, I don't know if it's coming through, but you can see just ever so slightly a little bit of detail in there. But eyebrows, bridge of a nose, this is going to be a very tricky seam to patch up. Again, fortunately, this client I've worked with them several times before. They are pretty forgiving for me, or of me, which is nice. So same thing with this. I mean, we have a transition of a mouth to be working on. This is where, there's a whole set of skills that, may not be necessary to performing a task like this, but that certainly help. I think back, I went to art school, and while I was in school, we had to do things like take drawing courses and take anatomy. I had to take anatomy, but I had to take anatomical drawing, not even fully figure drawing. That's the phrase I'm looking for. I had to take figure drawing, as did many other people. And I mean, it really gives you an appreciation for the anatomy of a person, of an individual. And it really kind of helps you understand face structure, bone structure, things like that. I am not an expert, and I really very rarely draw by hand anymore, unless it's like just a sketch. But it has helped immensely do things like try to estimate faces and reconstruct things like that, because it just helps. It helps keeps things natural. All right, so we're at the next step. I dropped that in behind. You can see the seams again, but how I've really only managed to fill in the gaps. I'm actually okay with that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put these in a folder. And just call it crack, and then let's make a new copy and merge those down, and we'll do crack fixed merged. So now I'm going to go through and I'm going to use some of the other tools in Photoshop, and I'm going to try to clean up these seams. This is by far going to be one of the hardest things to do in this, and I'm not even going to tackle this person's face right now. That's going to come a little bit later after I've like warmed up somewhat. So, but at the moment, we're going to come in and use a few other tools to help us out to try to get rid of this crack. Same philosophy as before. I'm going to just sit here and try to, fill in as minimal as possible. And you're going to see like little bits of patterns and little things start to emerge that, really once we downsample and once we zoom out and go back to like normal size on the image, are actually not going to read. And that's something that I picked up from my printing experience. It was just like learning, just you get this intuitive sense of like, okay, well, this detail at this print size, this isn't going to read. This isn't going to matter. And in fact, I still kind of err on the side of over detail and overworking and still lose some detail in a print. You don't lose it. It's just, our eyes can only discern so much and a printer can only print so finely. So if you're working at a certain resolution, there's only so much you can do. Cleaning up some dots here. Again, because I'm working on a copy of a copy, I'm not super worried about too much detail yet, losing too much detail, because if anything happens that I feel like I want to go back with, I can always mask things away, try again. But this is what I was talking about, making judgment calls. At this point, it's a light colored shirt. How much you want to keep? It's kind of up to you. It's up to the client. All right, so you see me dancing around the issue a little bit here. Sorry. You see me dancing around the issue a little bit here. Yeah, not really deliberately, but I am kind of avoiding the hard parts here because, to a degree, there's always that circling, You see the hardest thing you have to do in a project in a day, whatever, they say swallow biggest fish first or whatever. And there's that part of you that's like, I want to tackle it. You set it up, you get yourself ready to go, you get yourself ready to tackle it. And then you go to tackle it and you're just like, okay, well, I'm almost ready. And then you kind of dance around and it's push, pull until finally you just decide, boom, all right, it's time. These are not the only complicated faces I have to put back together today. That sounds really macabre, but that wasn't how I meant it. But I think you guys all get it. I think you understand where I'm coming from. See, this is tricky because, where's his lapel end? So, gotta kind of try to figure that out. And this is a little forgiving, I'll be honest. Again, not having a whole heck of a lot of detail in here, and knowing that when I come back through with some contrast adjustments and exposure adjustments after the fact, which I usually save to the end anyway, that is going to really, really help hide a lot of some of my guesswork. Like that, I mean, you saw that right there. I just kind of made that up. I mean, I didn't make it up. I have a reasonable idea of what that should look like based on all the perspective we have lined up and everything. But again, that's where the judgment call comes in. So same thing with this. This is where you would work out with your client what's worth it in terms of guesswork. I keep saying guesswork. It's not really all guesswork, but like, what's your client okay with in terms of, your interpretation of things? Because ear shape is one of those things that is very unique to an individual. I don't know what this individual's ears are shaped like, and I likely will never know, and I'm just gonna have to kind of ballpark it. So that's gonna be a little tricky. I wish I knew. I do, but I can't be faulted for not knowing because I never knew this person. So, all right. I'm gonna make a new layer for this face and for this face. So for the moment, all right, I guess we're gonna do it. So this, I don't know if you can tell, but so I'm gonna label this lower faces. But I don't know if you can tell, it kind of looks like I didn't line it up right here. But maybe I did, maybe I didn't. It's hard to tell. Proportions on this person's face, they look okay. I'm comfortable with those. So this could easily just be a shadow and a piece of the ear, and it actually does line up. We don't really know, but just gonna have to go with what I've got. So now I'm working on a new layer because I can always, if I don't like where I'm at, I can always salvage it, bring a little piece of this. And honestly, working pixel deep like this is not something you want to make a habit of. You can see I toggle that on and off, so if I decide I want to change it, I can do that. Do not make a habit of working pixel deep like this, but sometimes for this delicate work, and this is why I work at such high resolutions, because now I have a much better sample size to pull from, as opposed to trying to make this work, with, this person's face only being 6 pixels instead of, a couple dozen pixels. I don't know what it works out to be, but let's just try. Nope, that's not gonna work. All right, we're gonna try coloring around the eyes, soften my brush a bit. Sorry, talk to myself a little bit when I edit, not like all the time, not like crazy, but kind of helps you work through, problem solve. I do forget that I'm doing voiceover. It is not my normal routine, so I should just, it's actually sort of acceptable to talk to myself. I forget, because I can talk to you, talk to people watching long form. See, his face is getting pretty flat and pretty hollow. So I think this is going to be definitely an area for some dodging and burning and some like very, very localized contrast adjustments to try to fill in what I want to fill in here. Because again, I don't know if it reads, but I'm reasonably certain that like this area right here is an eyeball. And here you can see I just cloned over top of the whole eyeball. But there's really not much there to work with. See, I mean, it was damaged. If we go all the way back to the original, this was the original eye right here. So there's not much to work with. So gonna do the best I can. And I know I keep harping on that. I know I keep coming back to it, but it is really important to know. And important to know if you're going to be a client. It's, if you want to come in here, I'd hate to promise you something that I just couldn't deliver, We're going to try this and see if I like it. Put an eyeball there. And I can come back in later with some dodging, burning, some contrast levels adjustments, things like that. Put that back together. Again, this is kind of where some of that figure drawing. Yeah, see, it looks a little inhuman right now. Really tough to gauge this. Do our best. Yeah, you can see no eyebrows. Kind of looks like they're wearing like one of those masquerade masks. I guess a mask. So here we'll try to fill some of this in. This is tough. You can see there is a little bit of lip detail in here in the mouth, but man, not a lot. And this again too, because we have two different values. Yes, I'm going to try to smooth out this crack, but also I'm going to need to go in and spot adjust certain things. So we'll just see what this gives us. Take this out. Don't like that at all. So that did an okay job. Yeah, this is tricky. We are going to do a little trick here. Take our polygonal lasso tool and we're going to run a line right up to the top of this. Okay, we're going to do that. New layer. Flip horizontal. Okay, I know this is weird and it's going to look weird, and it may not even be a very faithful application of this person, but we're going to do it. See, I have eyes here. If I line that eye up as best I can, turn my opacity a bit. So this is the bridge like this. So this is this area right here. So I'm gonna try to pop this right over top of that. Looks like it kind of lines up. It's a little high. Come down a little. Okay. Let's go ahead and just rotate this in just a hair. I don't like the rotation. So at least for getting the outside of the face, that is a reasonable analog. If we drop this in behind, okay. Let's drop this in behind. And this, normally I would use a layer mask here because you want to work non-destructively, but this is all just white scan platen, so I don't really need it to be perfect. So go through, just take away some of the edges. Again, being careful to just leave the original. See, this is paper, so we'll cut up into the paper. I could use a selection here. Oftentimes I will. I mean, usually that's the best call or the right call. But sometimes, and this is just based on experience, I just work a little faster when I have my pen if I really just get hands-on. I know it seems a little counterintuitive, but it's just what I've run into. So now that we've done that, we can see that there are certain things about this that just don't line up well. That is not the layer I would like to move. And I'm not labeling this layer, although I probably should, mostly just because I'm going to just be merging it down here shortly. So that's kind of that. It's really not too bad. Let's back off. I mean, you gotta literally, pardon the pun, you have to look at the bigger picture sometimes. So overall, this person looking pretty scary, a little threatening. And this person, actually, the face isn't too bad if I can clean up that seam. But we're going to go in and do a little levels adjustment in here because I want to try to get this to match because that'll help clear up the seam as well. A lot of people don't really think about that, but I mean, half of matching it is making sure the tonality matches. All right, so subtle, before, after, it matches quite a bit better. It's a little touch oversaturated. I will be doing a tiny bit of color work to this after the fact, so I'm not going to go too crazy, but all right, that's better. So I'm going to continue to merge these. All right, you can see we've got a little bit of a tonality difference here where the scene was, a little bit here. I still have this to contend with. And a lot of times too, you'll see that, like, well, you won't really see day to day, but many people will experience this. I've experienced it a bunch. You'll be working and you'll have a spot that's just absolutely kicking your ass, and it's tough because it's tedious, and this is like, it's not delicate work. I mean, it's cool, we're working digitally. You can always go back to where you came from, but well, if you work non-destructively, which you should be, you can always go back to where you started. But first of all, you don't want to do that if you can avoid it, because it's just, oh my god, pain. But also, you'll see that, like, you'll have a spot that really just kind of beats you up, and you're just doing your best, and just like right now, there are certain things I'm starting to see in this image that I'm just like, I can't unsee. Certain patterns from my clone stamp and all that, things that really you probably won't notice, really probably won't read, but I'm seeing them and they're driving me insane. So I will back off here shortly and go to some other areas that are maybe a little bit less intense and come back to this. See here, like, to talking about that, like, this is clearly somebody's hand somewhere. I don't know where. I don't know what it's doing. I mean, it looks like, there could be some here. Looks like a young person, possibly a man, but it's hard to tell. And it's just starting to look like none of this is starting to look like it makes any sense. So if you back off and you take a breather, this might just be an area where we rely on a good crop to help us. I'll probably extend some of the backdrop from here down through, and I'll probably reflect this over to here, pick up the shoulder line, and just try to kind of fill that in, and then I'm going to crop it right to the edge of the garage door. Just do what we can. Also, anyone kind of notice, like, a weird face back here? It's just whatever the tree, whatever the shrubbery is back there, and it could be a stain, it could be any number of damage, but also, we are programmed, our brains are very good at recognizing facial patterns. It's part of us being social creatures. So we are predisposed to seeing faces and things that don't have faces, like, think about looking at the clouds. So maybe it is time to look back and start working on a different area for this image. Maybe do some of the more boring, monotonous work, but that is just as important, and give our brain a break. All right, I'm going to keep working on these, and I'm going to pause the voiceover for a little bit, and I'm going to speed this up, and we will come back when we are back onto some more tricky sections. Like this particular one here, you'll see me in just a minute. I'm going to go ahead and make a mask so that I'm really only working on the cracks again as best I can. But yeah, I'm going to pause the voiceover so you guys don't have to listen to me ramble. It seemed like a good idea when I wanted to make this video. But the more I'm sitting here and doing this, the more it's like, okay, you're watching me work. You're sitting here just watching me go to work for the day, which is great if you're into that. And thank you. I appreciate you being into that. I'm certainly into my work, but holy hell, I don't want to bore anybody else. So, yeah, so I'll see you on the other side. Okay, and we're back. I had to take a brief break. So far, this is the progress we made. It doesn't actually look like much for how long we've been working on this, but such is life. Let's see. So we're back. We are going to continue to work on. We're going to continue to work on our merged composite layer here. Just take out little things, little cracks, little specks, etc., etc. I mean, you know, areas like this that unfortunately are probably not probably, they are the areas where there actually has not been any oxidation on the print, but yet to get them to blend and to not look like a major spot, we actually sort of blend them anyway, and that's unfortunate. But sometimes once we add in like a curves and levels adjustments and things like that, that will do a better job of covering and merging the entire spot so that it actually like appears to make sense. So I'm just going through, talk about this a lot this video, but there is excuse me, there's certainly a decision to be made on a lot of things, and things like these little tiny specks, you can kind of see it here. Like this guy, there's a bunch of little ones like that. At some point, you just have to decide something's just too small and not noticeable enough, or else, like I said earlier, you will go insane. You will never not see something you can fix or correct or stamp out or anything, and it can be a little mesmerizing. The tighter you go, the further in you get, the just like the more you see, and it's kind of like a fractal in that way, just sort of weird. Now that I think about it, I mean, it's not a fractal. I mean, this is a finite bitmap image based in pixels, and I have a very hard limit as to what my monitor can display and so on and so forth. So, not really a fractal. That'd be kind of cool though. If you could find a way to record images in some sort of mathematics, some sort of equation that would make them a fractal and somewhat infinitely scalable without resolution loss, similar to a vector, which is probably a much more efficient way of achieving that goal. But one can dream. Let's see, a little crack there. I'm going to kind of leave some of these for later, just trying to take care of the menial, boring stuff. Again, a lot of which is probably going to be fast forwarded through. And in fact, I wonder even how much of this audio I'm going to cut, because I'm not going to use it, or I'm going to fast forward through the section. But we'll see. A lot of work ahead of me on this still. So this video ideally is going to be posted, published alongside a blog post that sort of outlines some of the retouching work that I do here, and will be probably used somewhat in let's call it an overview, like a showcase, sizzle reel, if you will. Sizzle reel. It's going to be a lot lamer than that, but I mean that in a good way. But yeah, it's not going to be anything super great, but go over some other stuff. I have some architectural retouching images that I'm going to be doing a quick, just very, very quick, before and after as a showcase. And I'm going to have some portrait retouching and a couple more restoration before and afters, I think. But yeah, it's just going to be like a 90-second spot, and this will be a component of it. It does seem a little ridiculous to have such a long form video like this be like boiled down into like a 90-second spot, but I mean, it's not all it's going to be. So it'll obviously live on here for anyone who wants the full 3-hour version or whatever this is going to end up being. If you don't want that, I don't blame you. I'm certainly not going to hold that against you. So one of the reasons I'm actually making this video and actually bothering to publish this full length and, in all of its tedious glory is I want to give people an idea of the amount of work and the type of work that goes into creating a restoration like this. A question actually I frequently get when I do restorations is whether or not I can do anything with the original image. Like, what's the actual, like, how do I go about doing this? And, I am in no position to do any sort of restorative work to an original at all. Never anything I've even looked into doing. I think the most amount of work I've ever done to a physical original, or at least, original that was brought to me by a client original, was I had to do this removal. This particular image, and not this one, but another one, was very, very badly stuck to the pane of glass that was inside the frame that the print was in. It had been like that for many years, and it had gotten wet. And, just to try to peel this thing off was simply going to just absolutely destroy it. And oftentimes what I will do when encountered with that is I will photograph the work. I use very high resolution cameras here, and, the thing is capable of making a very large print out of the box. So usually, like I said, the majority of my restoration work doesn't get printed bigger than 8x10. Occasionally it'll come out, I'll get a 13x19 or maybe even a 16x20, but that's fairly rare. But I can comfortably print 30x40s out of this camera and be very, very happy with the results. And I will usually photograph something that's in glass, and I have a little duplication stand that I use, and it comes out great, and that's a great spot for me to start working. I have a couple other little not proprietary, they're not a secret, but a couple of techniques that I use to get a nice clean scan, and between lighting and camera settings and shooting multiple copies and overlaying them in a way that hyper reduces noise, so that I know that the detail I'm seeing in front of me is as close as possible a reproduction of the print that I'm trying to restore. But occasionally I get a client that really just wants this thing separated, and it was one time, and it was against my better judgment, but it was when I was employed at a camera store and had the backing of a company behind me, and their business insurance, and I was just an employee, and trying to make a customer happy. And it was a print from I want to say mid 60s or so. I think that's what this particular client had stated, and it was a couple years ago. I don't remember the exact details, but anyway, it was this glossy photograph, but from an era when all printing was done in a some kind of a dark room or development lab. I mean, it was this thing was made the old-fashioned way. It was some sort of a silver I forget what the base is, but it was your photosensitive silver coating, and put onto a paper substrate, and it had a very, very glossy coating that welded itself to the front of this to the back of this glass plate. And I tried for hours. It happened to be a very slow day at the shop, and I had a lot of downtime. So I just kept very, very gently moistening the back of the print and peeling it and moistening and peeling and moistening and peeling and just trying to loose it up. And I mean, after hours, like I said, of just dabbing this thing with cotton balls, and I went out and actually bought a jug of distilled water on my lunch break. I don't really know one way or the other if that was really necessary or anything. I mean, these things were meant to be rinsed in water for some time after development, and yeah, after a while, I was able to free that thing from the glass backing. Unfortunately, I lost the lower corner of it. It did stay stuck to the glass. I still photographed it, um, instead of scanning it, and I used that corner to help rebuild in my final restoration, kind of like what I did here. Um, but I had to have the customer kind of sign an informal waiver that released us from liability. Who knows if it would have actually really stood up in court? But you know, um, this customer was actually thrilled that I got it off of there. They didn't mind that a little corner had been peeled off in the process. I had warned them ahead of time. And going back to a point I keep making is that you have to communicate with your customer as best you can, so that everybody's on the same page, because we're dealing with with emotions and memories. And as much as I like to try to be a logical business person, I am in business for myself, and I do have to turn that side, that like skill set of my brain on very frequently to do my job. I have to also be able to recognize when somebody has a very emotional attachment, and emotional attachments don't lend themselves well all the time to rational, logical thought. Not saying it's irrational to want to get your images, to preserve your memories or preserve your images, but what ends up happening is, it's very easy for a customer to take it personally if they feel you have not taken professional care of their work and treated their work with the respect and the reverence that they have treated this memory or this person. Or unfortunately, this field, we get a lot of memorial work, in memoriam, and I need this restoration turned around because the funeral's in 2 or 3 days, or that kind of thing. And it's unfortunate, and you have to just make sure you're turning the human side of you on, and actually communicating with your customers, and letting them know that you're also only a human. Because most of the time, as long as you're upfront with people, they're fine. And every once in a while, things can go a little off the rails, and I find that when it does, it's usually because there's a mismatch of expectations. So yeah, in this particular case, I had warned the client that there was a possibility that this could happen, and they were okay with it. They said to take the risk. They really wanted it off of there. So yeah, fortunately succeeded. Most of the time, like I said, I do not recommend that course of action, and I recommend my clients to leave it as is. It's the best chance you're going to have. I'm sure out there somewhere there are people who specialize in physical restoration of these things. I've never met one. I have never sought out the services of one. I couldn't recommend anybody. I wouldn't know where to start, except like maybe a museum or a larger organization's historical society of some kind, or large city's historical society. Someone who might actually be in an office that has resources to hire somebody with a very, very specialized skill set like that. So, if that's the case, I can't help you. But I mean, I can give you a digital restoration like this, but I can't actually fix your print for you, unfortunately. All right. Just about getting to the point. I'm going to have to start making some serious decisions on people and what to do here. And like, I know that throughout the course of this video, I have been working my way around the perimeter of this image. And, now that I'm going through and doing this, because I apologize. You'll see when I post this, like if you're watching this at all on YouTube or anything, like you can see I do not frequently post videos. This is not my specialty, and I'm okay with that. It's fine by me. But now that I've kind of retroactively come through and done all this, and sitting here thinking like, well, probably could have done a lot of that cleanup first. And I know that, I mean, there are plenty of people I look to for, inspiration or advice and that kind of thing. And like, they would do the same thing. If they were posting a video like this, they'd take care of the menial stuff, kind of like those old school cooking shows, where it's like, okay, and we're going to put the turkey in an oven preheated at 350 for, 3 hours or whatever. And they go and they put it in the oven, and they're like, and through the magic of television, we already have one prepared right here. And they pull out the perfect version of the exact thing they just put in the oven. So I could do something similar, I suppose. And for my short form content, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm going to do. But, if you're trying to like really illustrate to somebody the type of work and the amount of work that goes into, every minute of what they're paying for, essentially, kind of does it a disservice, because then they really miss out on like, hey, yeah, you had to actually go through and do all this stuff too. And, they miss out on the fact that, there's just a lot of foundation work that goes into prepping a file before you even can start considering doing a good job with the restoration itself. And, I felt like this would be a good, honest way to show, my process and what to expect from it, and just where the time is spent. And this will get cut up, I'm sure. And I'm sure I will do shorter, smaller versions of it here and there. And, other restorations, I will do, just one section or something for the camera, and just say, hey, here's this thing I'm working on, and I'm going to show you, here's this one really tricky component, and I will show you how I handle this tricky component, number one or whatever. And then I'll show that, and it'll be a 15-minute video, 10-minute video, whatever, and we can all go about our days, and I'm not wasting anyone's time. But that's not the scope of this video. So, and in the future too, I have plans to live stream this stuff. I think it would have been great to take something maybe a little less complex than this. I don't think I want to stream for 3.5 hours, but also I really can't bank on getting 3.5 hours like uninterrupted to talk to, like, to sit, to stream and talk to people. And well, people, I assumes anyone's going to actually pay attention, but to just like devote to this. And throughout the course of filming even this, I had to take a break. I had to eat food, actually do that, and tend to some personal stuff, and not like bad personal stuff, just we all have things we have to do with our days and our lives, and that's what I had to stop to do. So yeah, so I couldn't even go through and get all of this in that short amount of time. So I'm just going to go through, see, we're onto like a spot now again where we're starting to really like affect people's faces and things like that. And I mean, not to be a coward about it, but I am still kind of beating around the bush. I'm still taking the low hanging fruit and tweaking kind of the easy stuff. But and for those of you, again, I do not do this that frequently. I'm not trying to bury the lead here. I'm not trying to like keep you guys going and have you just be like, my God, would you just hurry up and finish that face? Would you please just get to the good stuff or the meat of it or whatever? Like, it's not really my intention here. As I think about it, okay, it could come across like that, and I apologize. But this is, like I said, it's an honest, like, just no bullshit, like, version of how I go about these things. I will often beat around the bush with something like this. I'll sit here and like, part of it'll be in my head. I'll be drawing up a plan, like while I'm doing all this other stuff. I'll be thinking, okay, what's the best way to go about this? What's the best technique to use for this? And when am I ready to do this? Or if it's like, if I think I'm going to have to stop shortly or something, or take a break or get up and walk away from my desk, am I, should I wait until I come back to start something? Or do I use it as a marker? Do I say, okay, I can get up and get a glass of water right after I reconstruct this person's face. And when that's done, I know that this really complex portion is finished, and I can come back and have an easy time and a fresh glass of water or whatever, so that is very much a component of how I decide like how to go about all this stuff. I'm sure this is fascinating to a lot of you. Me just sitting here talking about my taking a break for a glass of water, high point of my day, but we still have a lot to do on this too, and not just the physical damage and reconstructing it. I mean, here we'll back out a little bit, but you can see as I toggle these layers on and off how it looks on the one hand like we've barely done anything. Yeah, if you toggle on and off, you can see all that we really have done. And we still have we have a major crack here, which really actually won't be too bad. That'll probably be one of my next things to finish. This one here won't be too bad. We're not going through anyone's face, although this person's hair, and this. I'll level with you. I don't know the best way to go about fixing up this person's face and hair. That's going to be a tricky one. We'll go through. So we have this crack. This is pretty major. Fortunately, it avoids anyone's eyes. We have this one that cuts through his face. And then we've got like this big chunk and this big chunk. And then with this one, this is going to be a bit of a bear. So yeah, quite a bit. So after that, I mean, we still have to remove the bluing, the tarnishing of the silver in this print. And, it doesn't look like there's really all that much range in this shot. There's really not a ton of detail, but it's going to be a lot of curves and levels tweaking to try to get this to an acceptable place. And I haven't decided yet if I'm going to work over top of the original patina and just try to keep that the way it is. The client wants to keep the like antique look. They like that, and because it is an antique photograph, and that'll take me to another point in just a second, but I haven't decided if I want to do that or if I want to take the color information away, again, non-destructively. I'll use an adjustment layer. But if I take the color information away and then just work on my luminosity and my levels and stuff like that, get that where I'm happy, and then sort of somewhat artificially put the color back in and try to match it as best I can. I mean, certainly that's an okay call because it gives you control. A lot of this stuff is about what you can and cannot control. But on the other hand, I find that it rarely reproduces when you make the print. It rarely reproduces with that same sort of authenticity, because people ask me to do that kind of antiquing stuff, not to do it to a print that is not originally that way, but they ask me to keep it, and like, I don't know, I'm just never quite satisfied. There's always just something about the color quality when it's printed in the end that's like it's decent, and like it's certainly, again, like clients are accepting of it and they like it, but I just can't help but feel like it's just not the same as really an old antique print. It was like really truly yellowed paper and things like that. And I've really tried hard to try to get my colors to where they really authentically reproduce that, and it's just it is an art that I feel like I rarely hit the nail on the head with it. So I think if I work over top of this and try to periodically make sure the colors just stay balanced, that's a pretty decent way to go about it. So sometimes that'll produce a better result, or at least a more authentic looking result in the end. So I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. See, sort of making it up as I go along. I mean, you would think you just have one go-to technique. I mean, especially for work purposes where, efficiency, you're not trying to reinvent the wheel. You just need a process, and you need to be able to repeat that process quickly and reliably. But, I've always found that you should keep several processes, like, keep a couple of them warming up in the bullpen, and then you can know exactly which one you want to pick when the time comes to call one in. So, they're not pitchers, so they don't get tired. So metaphor checks out, I guess. We're going to go in again too deep here. These very, very fine cracks I'd like to take out. I'd like to affect as little of this as I can. See, this is what I mean, though. This is what you have to be careful about, because they just, the deeper you get, the finer they get, and like some of these just flat out will not show up on a print. So it's kind of not worth your time to do them. Again, in this case, I know that this client is not exactly printing these out 30 by 40, so I'm pretty confident I can rely on my media to bail me out a little bit here. See, and this is always strange to me too, because I know that there's no extra detail we're going to pull from this. I mean, there might be a little hidden under there somewhere in the scan, but realistically, it's such an old print, and the camera was so old, and like, just there's not much I'm going to get from that. But it is still sort of weird to think that I'm copying little pieces of his eyelid and putting it over other parts of his eye, that if we could actually see detail in that eye, it would not look natural. Not that I'm, not that I want anyone to think I'm just like faking it all the time or anything, but things get tricky. All right, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to go back to my little blue channel here. That is less than ideal. So, just freehand it. Okay, get rid of some of this. Go in. Start here. Branch out from there. So I sort of have an idea about that person's face with like some of the dark staining over top of it as to how I'm going to go about it. And I haven't fully made up my mind yet, but I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to try to do that soon, because I could also easily break that out into another video that just like on its own. So I think I don't mind the idea of doing something like that. So I'm trying to take care here to stay within the lines of the crack, just to make sure I'm not affecting the face too much. And sometimes I can't help but think I'm actually being a little overcautious. Usually it's good practice to be, err on the safe side, err on the side of caution, they say, but sometimes you just got to get the job done. But nonetheless, trying to be as faithful as I can. And this being the internet, just thinking about it, I know you guys don't hold back. Any of you see stuff in here that I'm just kind of doing that, you may have a better technique for, or you think could be more efficient or done faster. Or, I mean, I try to keep up with what Photoshop's doing. I'm on Creative Cloud. I download all the updates once the community kind of has decided that there aren't any major stability issues. And, but it's impossible to just like stay on top of everything. Can't tell you how many times I'll open up YouTube and my feed will recommend like, all those tips and trick videos and stuff, like, which are great. And usually you find that like when you've been doing this for, 15 years, like I have, I mean, maybe not restoration specifically, but when you've been using a particular software suite for that long, there are very few surprises. Every once in a while, someone will come up with something and I'll just look at it like, Jesus, I use this program every day and I had no idea that I could do, that with it, whatever it might be. Case in point, some updates to the content aware fill feature and refining the mask and all that. I think that's actually several updates, several versions old at this point, but I've known about content aware fill for quite a while. Like, that's not a surprise. That was amazing when they introduced that. It was a godsend, kind of, especially doing, landscape work. I don't really do landscape work professionally, but I do take photographs for myself. It is something, I live just outside the Adirondacks. I live in an area that's incredibly beautiful for, many, many months out of the year. So, I'll find shooting a landscape and there'll be some distraction that I want to remove, or, sensor dust, or, something. And I just, that content aware fill is a lifesaver. Or architecturally, I get sky replacement requests constantly, and it certainly helps. But it was only, a couple of weeks ago that I realized you could actually refine where you're sampling your content aware from, and you can publish the output to a new layer and all that stuff. And like, that's immensely helpful. So if any of you all know that feel like you want to comment or feel compelled to comment, then feel free to let me know, because I'm always looking to improve. Of course, none of us, like, no one starts out good at anything, and as you go, you just keep getting better and better, and it doesn't matter how good you are, there's always something you can learn. There's always a piece of your craft that you can improve on to hone your skills and, just further your education and further your talent. So that's an interesting topic to consider too. I don't really know a lot about the wardrobes, the dress of different time periods. I mean, we sort of have this intuitive sense, I think, culturally, when we see somebody dressed up from a certain era, even if we can't tell you when exactly, we kind of get the sense of roughly where we would place them. Like if we had to place them in a movie genre, or in a type of movie, well, movie genre, type of movie, same thing, right? I am a genius. If we had to drop them into some sort of period film, we'd kind of get a decent sense of where to put them. Whether or not that film is accurate, whatever. We're not going to go into that. It's not the point of this metaphor. But, so I think we have this intuitive sense just culturally through like our entertainment and our media and stuff. But in terms of like actually really knowing, like, if you showed me somebody dressed different ways, I really probably wouldn't know at all. Like I could just maybe guess a decade and be off by, a decade in either direction, and I'd call that good. I wonder how helpful like studying something like that would be, if that's something that would produce results or not. So I think it's an interesting thought to consider. There are certainly other disciplines that I have studied either out of necessity because of school, or out of my own volition and maybe just pursued it independently, that have helped. I touched on figure drawing earlier, and that does help immensely, trying to reconstruct somebody's face and make it look more realistic. Or if I'm doing a portrait retouch for somebody, and just kind of trying to keep things into that realm of believability. I mean, you have that uncanny valley effect that a lot of heavily retouched faces can have, and it's not always a bad thing. I mean, it's a stylistic choice, and there's nothing particularly wrong with it. And I do have some other media planned based around sort of exploring this notion of like, yeah, things can be heavily retouched, but there are times when maybe that's okay, or maybe that's an artistic decision. And it seems like we kind of have this aversion to being lied to, which is strange, right? Who would want to be lied to? But it's not about that. I mean, you have to consider that, if there's a particular final vision in mind, and what's the target audience, like what's the purpose of you creating that particular piece, photograph, whatever. There are different rule sets that apply, kind of, and I'm not really rules like law necessarily, although in some cases there could be. But if you're trying to sell a product, and you are just using Photoshop to illustrate in features and adornments on the product that just don't exist, well, yeah, that's false. It's unethical. That's not a good idea. You open yourself up to liability. You open your business up to liability. But I mean, it's not a good way to build rapport and build a brand, because you're like laughing in your customer's face. Essentially, you're not building a relationship with them that they feel they can trust. But if you're selling, let's put it this way, if you're selling a house, and even selling a house that already exists, that's a little tricky even, I would say. But let's say you are a builder and you want to show off a building that you built, but it's not about, this is the exact building I built with journalistic integrity. It's more about, this is something I feel like I'm leading with my best foot forward. This house exhibits features that I offer, as a builder, as an architect, services that I offer. It's not necessarily about, the Johnsons living on 23 Smith Street. This is their house and this is their layout. It's about, I'm, XYZ builders, and these are examples of things that I can make. Well, then in that case, taking a stormy sky because the day that you had to be able to shoot was just less than ideal weather, and you take that sky and you put a blue sky behind the house, that's fine. Like, everyone's gonna have their own opinion, and some people are just like, death to retouchers, death to photoshoppers, or blah, 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 whatever. But, that's not dishonest, as long as you're not being dishonest with your product and your service and all that. Now, if you're a realtor and you're photographing, you have someone photograph a house, and, this house is in the middle of a downtown area and there are several rundown buildings near it, and you ask someone to, let's say, use Photoshop to composite those buildings out, and you composite it into like a more suburban scene and just something that's just a lot more flattering. And that's kind of dishonest, because you're going to put those, you're going to list that house. It's going to go on MLS probably, or something similar. And, you're going to entice people to come in, and they're going to say, look, this looks like the perfect house for us, the perfect spot for us, and they're going to come into your open house, and they're going to view, and they're going to be like, well, what the hell? Like there's 3 burning warehouses next to this, and you made it look like it was situated, in a beautiful, idyllic suburban community. Like, that's disingenuous. That is dishonest. Like, can't do that. But it's a judgment call, or if you are going into journalism, if you want to go into journalistic territory, that's, hey, that is a whole separate post. and one that I do plan on tackling, actually. I'm very much looking forward to that, but that is one of those going to be a long form article, and I have to do my research, so I don't really want to lay too many claims, and I, before I'm really prepared to, honestly, to back up what I'm saying. So journalistic integrity, though, is something that if you mess with that, there can be some very, very serious consequences. There can in the commercial and marketing and advertising world as well. Very famous, and again, this will be covered later. I will go into more depth and find better information and stuff other than me just riffing because I'm filling my time slot here. But they talk about the Campbell's case. There was in the 1970s at some point, these couple of guys, college students, maybe something like that. The version of the story I remember, and like I said, as I go and I craft this post, I will actually check my facts and do my best to like not just speak from the hip here and figure out something real and accurate. But basically the version I heard, they kind of had it in their heads they're just trying to be smartasses in a way, not really intending to have industry-wide like implications, but sort of saw an opportunity. They bought this can of Campbell's soup, and it was this lush, beautiful looking soup on the can label. And, they poured it out, and I don't know what kind of soup it was. I don't know the details around it, but they poured it out and it was a mess. Looked nothing like what they showed on the label at all. And apparently this was pretty rampant in product imagery at the time. I mean, especially working with photographs, I want to say that, like at this point, photography was well established in the advertising world, but there were still people doing illustrations and things like that. But I don't know. Again, need to fact check myself. Need to make sure I'm getting good information. But anyway, they decided to sue Campbell's and basically said, hey, like, this is the soup you advertised on your can, and this is the soup we got. Like, this is pathetic. This is not acceptable. And the case was escalated pretty far. I don't know if it went to the Supreme Court or not. Again, I'll look it up. But it escalated to the point where actually, laws were drafted that basically said, like, if you don't put something accurate up, like, it's on you, the manufacturer to accurate, or, marketing company, whatever. It's on you to accurately portray your product and to not be dishonest to the consumer. And it was actually kind of a landmark case. It turned a lot of the advertising world on its head, and it really led to a lot of reforms in how we advertise things, all the way to a point where I was actually speaking with a gentleman that did all of the food photography for a major food distributor, food brand. I'm not going to say who it was because this is not anything. I mean, I'm not in touch with the person. I can't turn around and ask permission. But this particular gentleman had photographed for this company for over 30 years and was talking about how, after that happened, industry wide, not just with his industry, but in general, it became a lot easier to photograph the actual products. So, you hear about all the, you read an article or, maybe some web outlet, some popular website has a thing in a clickbait title about, like, you won't believe these 7 tricks photographers use to lie to you. And like, it's honestly just like industry standard tools of the trade, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. We use shortening for ice cream sometimes, like, but we're not selling you the ice cream in that instance. Typically, we might be selling you the bowl that ice cream goes into, or, if you're a product photographer, or, you're selling the topping that goes onto the ice cream, or you're selling, the dish in front of the thing of ice cream. We're just trying to tell a story. I mean, photography is narrative. Any visual collateral is narrative, but especially any advertising, you're trying to tell a story that brings the viewer, that relates to the viewer and brings them into your scene in a way that's believable to them. So, you're not selling that shortening ice cream. You're selling, the main course ahead of it. but you just know that like you're also trying to make their mouth water by like, oh man, we got dessert for dinner or Jesus, we have ice cream for dessert after, and like, you're telling this whole story. So yeah, okay. But if we were actually selling you the ice cream, we might actually go in and get a ton of ice cream and scoop 4 cartons worth of ice cream or 10 cartons worth of ice cream until we get the perfect scoop. And we won't scoop it until we've used like a dummy stand-in to get everything perfect and exactly how we want it. And then once everything's how we want it, then we'll go and we'll drop what's called the hero food. We'll drop the hero food in just at the last second, and we'll shoot. And then usually after just a minute or two, it started to melt in a way that like the surface doesn't quite look good and all that. Now, are there great lengths that we go to achieve that shot? The kind of lengths that, the person scooping your ice cream that day are not going to go to make it look perfect? Absolutely. But you avoid a lot of headaches in the end if somebody ever wanted to come back to you, which, I mean, come on, we've all seen them. We've all seen the fast food photos of like, this is how they advertised this burger. This is how it came to me. This is not acceptable. Like, but I can guarantee you in that product photograph, they may have had to go through 500 hamburgers or, 400 hamburger buns, but they found the one that's perfect. And then they took, they made 25 hamburgers and then they found the one that was perfect. And they started cooking it right before they started actually shooting. Like, your set, your lighting will all be good to go before you put that burger on, or very close to good to go before you put that thing on. And then, you get it on the grill, and as soon as it looks cooked enough, we're not eating it. It doesn't have to be edible in the middle, but as soon as the outside looks cooked enough, then they take it and they drop it on the burger, and they've already found their perfect produce and their perfect condiment, and they dress it up really quick, and then we shoot. And then once the thing's cooled down enough that, it just starts to look a little like not stale, but, the food has died, we say. Then we move on. If you need another shot, you do it again. Waffles, same thing, but you can sit there and say, technically, this product photograph, this is an achievable result. See, it's coming along. I'm not super happy with that. Let's see what I can do to fix it. All right, so it's this one that's got to go because this one was kind of original. All right, we'll do that. Let me hit this up first. Same kind of deal. Try to color within the lines. Which, kids, your parents are going to tell you to stay inside the lines. A lot of them. I'm going to tell you that staying inside the lines makes for an easier life, but it doesn't necessarily make for the most fulfilling or best life. Just depends on what you want out of life and out of the world. But I suggest you make those decisions for yourself instead of just, swallowing what's sold to you all the time by anybody, whether it's people you look up to or not. It's important to make your own way. Said the poor art school graduate. But whatever, I enjoy what I do, so that's what's important. I do enjoy the freedom it allots me as well. Not for everything. It's not like you can just fuck off all the time. Not even close. In fact, I have less time than if I just had a job. I mean, I could go get some bullshit retail job and fuck off in my free time a lot more comfortably than I can fuck off now. But who the fuck wants to do that? So, all right, we filled that in. This, I'm gonna just sort of patch this out because I'm not happy with it. Take it from like over here, but it's still sort of the same issue. Let's better. And this actually was part of the original, but it's really distracting and it's annoying me. You know what? I'm going to take the right way out. Oh, are we? Because I like that. Okay. I was going to say, we'll take the right way out and do contrast stuff over top of it, but I actually prefer that. And it's grass, and the client said I could. So, yeah. Nothing you can do about it. This is bugging me, but it looks like it's part of the original. I don't know if there's like a detail in the dress or something, but what are you going to do? Some of these cracks out, but we're going to do this really kind of quick and dirty because these will probably get cropped anyway. But it's definitely better. It's just a better starting point for certain things, especially because I want to get rid of this crack, which may actually stay. So. Right, we're going to remove that from our selection. Boom. Go ahead and select a mask. Smart radius, 1 pickle. No feathering, not for this. Add a little contrast to it. Hit OK. And gone. Hide that just for the moment. All right, so our next step is take the polygonal lasso tool, not the polygamy lasso tool. Get yelled at every time I call it that. And we're going to go through, I'm just going to select parts of this person's jacket. This part's going to be pure fiction, hopefully well-informed fiction. But it's going to be pure fiction. And, you know, again, client's okay with that. I'm okay with that. This insignia, this emblem here, you know, I'm sorry, I don't know much about this person or what branch they served in. You know, I don't know my insignia that well. I don't know if this should be flipped or reversed like this or not. I'll probably just end up removing it, to be honest. I feel like that's probably the better way to go in this case. But you can actually see it's a pretty nice blend overall. I'm going to tweak this just a hair. Put just a tiny bit of blue out of this. Put just a little bit of yellow back in. And take some green out. Too much. Way too much. Very subtle, but input, output. Okay, that's about good right there. Like I said, very subtle. All right, and then under this layer, well, I can't go under for now. I got to go over this layer, and I am going to merge these again. So, yeah, you know, I'm not labeling them at the moment. You know, I know it's sort of common practice, common knowledge to get really, really layer happy, and there are times when that's appropriate, and I don't want to take anything away from that. I just find that for the work that I do here, for any of you who, you know, feel like you want to know or need to ask or anything, like, it just slows everything down. Like, I'm, you know, I work on a good system. I, you know, built it myself, did a lot of research, you know, kind of overbought in some areas, but like overall, this is a very, very capable system, and I'm very happy with it. You know, it's just like, why spend the system resources if you don't have to? I have all my originals. I can go back as needed. I check my progress as I go to make sure that I'm happy with it. I am, you know, it's overall, it's like, it's fine. So I prefer to keep my files a little bit lighter weight. Just keeps processing, saving time down, things like that. It's not super lightweight. I mean, this is a very high-res file, but, you know, imagine if I had a new layer for practically every brush stroke. You know, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I don't think that that's really necessary per se. So I'm not gonna go nuts. So, especially when it comes to like storing client work, I keep client work on file like this for, for 60 days after I deliver the job. And, like that's kind of my promise to my customers. But I mean, I'll be honest, I go a little longer than that before I actually clean out drives, especially if it's somebody who is a regular customer, because, if it increases the likelihood that they may come back and need access to that file again. They may not, who knows, but, why am I gonna say, like, I'm just not gonna get rid of that. So on the other side, like, my clients, I don't ask my clients to like pay for my storage or anything, like just to keep your file here. I'm certainly not a cloud service, so I'm not going to offer that as a service. So why am I going to hang on to some super high res version of their file when, I mean, all I need is what they asked for. So, yeah, I'd love to sit here and say, I do keep the master, and I keep the original, I keep the Photoshop file. I keep the original scan, but that's kind of enough. So why do I need a 1.5 gigabyte Photoshop file kicking around if I can achieve the same thing in 280 megabytes? It's logistics. Probably one of the more boring things I've talked about, although maybe not the most. I've talked about a lot of things, and I'm sure none of them have been all that interesting, or not a lot of them have been all that interesting. All right, I hate to say it, but I think I'm happy with how that arm came out. This, because we have a little bit of a green like haze I just want to get rid of. Make it blend a little more smoothly with the surrounding area. Yeah, I mean, okay, is the shoulder a bit weird? Yes. Could it be a bit low? Yeah, but also I think that this person stands with a low shoulder in this shot anyway, if you look. And it could be the garment, it could be a lot of things, but if you check that angle, I'm reasonably sure that that's kind of the thing. I mean, I say that, but then like this emblem should be a little lower then, shouldn't it? But pretty good for what I had to work with. Let's say that. All right, I have this to fill in. I'm just going to try to patch this because again, I sort of made this up from nothing. So not quite, but close. Same with this. Figure sometimes if you can just get something like that to blend into the background. I mean, this is so low fidelity that it is very forgiving because you don't know what that is. I mean, it looks like the handle of a shovel maybe, or the side of, let's say a side of a ladder, but not really. We don't know what that is, and we don't know where it ends, and we know that the side of the building, that the trim and some of the framing, not the framing, but some of that kind of ends right here, so it's probably leaning either just behind it or just onto it. It's got to end at some point, and it's in the background, so a lot of focus. The shot itself is all old and kind of soft, so you can get away with it. So because again, I don't think anybody is like really too hung up on whatever's leaning in the backdrop there. Maybe somebody, maybe a relative is like, didn't Grandpa have that 1915 antique shovel leaning in the garage? Anyone know what happened to it? Sure, but come on. Okay, we've come a very long way, and I'm very happy with the progress and very happy with the results, and just keep plugging at it. There's still this I'm not super thrilled with. I think I'm just going to dodge that, kind of lighten that up a bit. This can go away right now. I'm not fully aware of what it is. These, I think I'll see what will happen to them after I do some levels stuff, or like some, I keep saying levels, I mean curves. All right, we're moving along. couple problem areas still. Let me move this crack, we have this crack. And then we'll get into the levels and adjustments and other things. So normally one little piece you're missing out on here, which is not necessary. I usually set an alarm for usually a predetermined set of time. I might do 15 minutes at a time or half hour at a time, and I'll work to that alarm. And I find it helps me remember to actually get up and like take a break. It helps remind me, like if it's around a meal time, that I'm hungry, because sometimes I'll just get so into this. It'll be like, I'll notice I'm hungry and I'll look down and it'll be, instead of lunchtime, it's 3:30. It's like, okay, well, if I eat now, dinner's soon, and I could, nothing's stopping me, but, just don't want to eat that close together. And then I don't want to eat that late at night if I do push my, my dinner time back because I had a late lunch, or late dinner. I'm just working and I realize like, oh crap, like I'm hungry, but it's 10:30 at night. Should have broke for food, but it also helps with keeping track of time. No shit, but it helps keeping track of like a client's time, so that I'm giving them what they asked for. And everyone kind of, philosophies differ with this, I find, but to me, if you are paying me hourly to work on your image like this, you're paying me hourly to work on your image. The place I used to work, a similar structure. We'd bill hourly for this kind of thing. We had predetermined prices for certain processes, but for this kind of stuff, it was, we'd give you a time estimate and we'd work with you based on, your time and your budget, and we would, sorry, I keep picking the wrong tool. And we would come up with something that made everyone happy, and that was fine. But I remember, one time my boss, who mostly was pretty good about just letting me work freely, kind of noticed that I'd been working on this one restoration for quite some time, and he asked how long I'd been at it, and I told him, that I was just about done, and client's time was just about up, and I kind of took him through my little system of like how I tracked time and everything. He's like, well, he's like, there's a lot of setup you have to do. He's like, and if you have to stop and come out and help a customer, which was, I thought, a constant problem. Not helping a customer. Let me rephrase. Helping the customer was not the problem. The problem was constant interruption. I would have a production schedule and I would be trying to get stuff out, but as kind of like the person running the photo lab, and at times the only person employed in the photo lab when we were short on help, there wasn't anyone else around who would take in an order. Just this kind of outdated culture of like, not my job. But also I did have specific questions I had to ask people, and outside of the typical like, here's my memory card and I want to make 5 4x6s of image number 4563, like beyond that, people would use the fact that they didn't feel comfortable asking the right questions, or that they knew the right questions to ask, to just not help a customer. They would acknowledge them. It wasn't like terrible customer service or anything, but they would just basically say like, yeah, okay, the person who does this is not in right now, and you'll have to wait to talk to them, or they'd interrupt me while I was trying to get work done. And it's a customer service role as well, or at least it was at the time, and so I get it, and I'm in no way do I like begrudge the customer their time. Like, it's they're there to be helped. Like, you do what you need to do to please the customer. Like, that's completely fine by me. But I just didn't get a lot of support with stuff. So he asked me like how long I'd been working on it, and I took him through sort of the whole thing. And at the end, he's like, if you need to go out and help a customer like during the process of your restoration, he's like, that's still part of their time. And I asked him to explain. He's like, well, think about it this way. Every job takes time to do. It's like, it doesn't matter what it is, how simple it is, how complicated it is. It's like, everything takes time to complete. He's like, and if part of your job is going out to help these other customers, that is, you know, that overlaps with other work that you're doing. Because I mean, it always overlapped. There was never nothing to do. So he's like, that takes your time while you're working on this project. So that is part of their overall time budget. So I could go and spend 15 minutes with a customer, and by his logic, and I clarified this with him, by his logic, like if I was helping a customer while I was working on this restoration, even though I was getting no work done on this restoration, that counted toward their budget. That counted toward the time that they had allotted us to work on this. That just didn't make sense to me. Like, okay, he's a numbers guy, he's a successful business person. Like, he worked at this store for 40 years, and it was, he worked his way up to ownership and partnership there, and that's great and great for him. But it just didn't make sense. Like, if I go to a mechanic and I need work done on my car, I'm paying that mechanic to work on my car. I'm not paying that mechanic for working on someone else's car. And when they quote me a price, they quote me a price based on how long they think it'll take them to do my job, like my particular, my customer order. They're not saying, well, it should only take me a half hour to replace your brakes, but I've got 3 jobs in front of you, so it's going to take me really, and one of them's a really complicated job, so I'm looking at like 5 or 6 hours worth of work for the day before I get to your car. So, or, hey, if your car is up on the lift and I got to stop what I'm doing because a customer rolls in and I got to help them, well, while your car's sitting there on the lift with nothing being done to it, I have to bill you for that. No, like I would go to another mechanic if my mechanic told me that. Whether or not internally they actually factor that into the time quote and the price quote that they give me, I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. But I mean, I get that. To me is just like, it's very dishonest. And again, if a mechanic did tell me that was the case, I really probably would go elsewhere. And I feel the same way about this stuff. I feel like if a person is paying me to work on their work, they're paying me to work on their work. They're not paying me to work on their work and then go out and help a customer. That's up to me to set my pricing to make sure that I can account for all of that time and be a sustainable business. And, it's true for anybody. So like, I need to think about like, if I'm charging you a certain amount of money per hour to do this work and to work on your project, I need to understand that, that price does somewhat compensate for, in addition to all the other work that I do, it does all even out to basically be like, well, that 15 minutes that I'm spending with a customer, is also worth my time because I'll hopefully convert them to a sale. But also, I know that like, my time for the day is accounted for. But I'm not going to spread that out like onto someone's individual job. You spread that calculation out across all of your pricing. So, for me to just basically, it's kind of like a tax for me to put that on the back of, one particular genre of customer is just really kind of disingenuous to me, So, so that's kind of what I use the timer for as well. I kind of use it to like, I will stop the timer. If you pay me for an hour's worth of work on your project, I'm going to start your project and I'm going to start the timer, and then I'm going to stop that timer when something else comes up. If I get a phone call, if I have to answer an email, if I take a lunch break, like that timer gets paused so that you actually get an hour of me specifically addressing your job and actually like doing your work. So, it's just like, it's a philosophy thing. And, like I say, I do not profess to be a particularly strong business person necessarily. I know what I need to make and I do the basics and, I'm happy. But, if there's someone else out there who like wants to explain the breakdown to me in a way that I can understand, feel free, teach me something if you want to. If you feel like you need to, if you feel like that's a valuable use of your time. But we're getting to this point where I kind of just need to wrap this up. For my own sanity, I need to wrap it up for the evening. I need to wrap it up for the client, but there's still plenty to do. Again, cracks running through faces. I might be being needlessly delicate. It might just be one of those things where, yeah, of course, there's no detail here. Do this, you can do it quickly. I will admit, sitting here chatting with all of you, or none of you, or however many are here, has been slowing me down a little bit. But that's also why I agreed to do extra on this for my client, because I knew that to some degree it would come at a small expense to them, not financially, but in terms of it might take me a few more hours than I plan on, and it might I might need to block out an extra day, and it might take a little bit of extra time to get that day to work on the project. So maybe it pushes their turnaround time back, instead of a few days to a week. So I think as it stands, provided I actually follow through and finish this tonight, they should have their file tomorrow, and they can go, and then we'll discuss printing. I don't offer printing services myself specifically. It's a lot of equipment to maintain. It's a lot of money to maintain that equipment, and there are a ton of great printing outlets online that, quite frankly, could do just as good a job as I would do, if not, some better, some worse. I guess it depends on where you go and what you're doing and stuff. Who can do a very competitive job for way less money than I can compete for. So, that being said, I do offer prints for those who just decide they want me to handle it, or who want to buy through me. I have a couple of longtime customers that are just content to say, you do it. Here's what I'm looking for. I trust you to order from somebody, and I've got a couple of vendors that I go to online, and they're typically the same people I send my customers to. So I'll discuss that with the client in terms of what they want to do. At the time, that was very loud. I'm sorry. At the time I took the job in, excuse me a moment. All right. So at the time I took the job in, they didn't seem to think they'd want me to do the printing, but they were open to it, having me order a print for them and then sending it along. So, we'll see. We'll see what they decide. I'm completely fine either way. I'm happy to have done the work for them. So they're this client is very, very nice people and is very good to me. So happy to do it. Sampling a little from the original cheek. Trying my best to follow the mouth line and stuff. This is gonna be a little tough. Things don't quite go at the same angle. This kind of comes around. Looks like this. This does that. This does that. Again, judgment calls here on the face. Sample from the forehead, just to get a realistic blend. That's decent. All right, with that, let's just go through. Clone this. Okay. I got lucky here. The crack went just west of the lapel. Mostly. All right,
back up. We'll do something here. It's kind of the nice thing. Buy yourself some time to focus. I wonder how much of that too is like down to me just like call it stress levels, but not like real stress. Like just, it takes up space in my brain to know that like, all right, I'm working on this complicated aspect, this one particular hard piece, but look at how much else I still have to do and blah, blah, blah. Like I don't actively think this stuff, but there's part of me that wonders if that is a factor when like I start doing some of the easier stuff. Like, you know what, this is complicated. This is difficult. Let me clean up some of the easy stuff I can take care of right now while I sort of like block out time to focus on this, like a little like micro scheduling almost. Yeah, call it micro scheduling. Sounds like a cool like Silicon Valley term. So, using my patented micro scheduling, or I look at it like, okay, we're going to take care of these things that are easy and controllable first. And then like that way, when I do start working on this other thing, I don't have anything else in my vision, in my eye line nagging me going, hey, don't forget me. Hey, don't forget me. I can just devote all of my focus to that one particular area. Probably bullshit. Probably not actually much to that, but I like to think about these things. I like to wonder these things. So why the hell not? All right, not bad. Same kind of stuff here. You know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to take you, go like this. And copy you. I used to have these flip horizontal and flip vertical stuff on keystrokes, and when I built the new computer, I didn't migrate my shortcuts over, and I need to do that because it's really a huge pain to have to try to do that all the time. So again, here, normally I'd use a mask, but working quickly, and I kind of feel pretty confident that I can undo anything I want to undo. All right, so I'm not covering anything there. So let's take that and do that. All right, I'm happy with that. Oh boy. Really kind of bugs me that Photoshop does that for naming. Overwrites your file, your layer name with whatever was above it. If anyone knows how to change that, let me know. And if not, Adobe, what the fuck? I get your customer experience emails fairly often, and I actually do bother to fill them out since I use this every day. Let's get in touch. Maybe work some of that crap out. Oh, I'm not going to like that. Patch does not work well around borders. That wasn't so bad. Put you in there like that. Again, nice believable job. Cool. Even a little bit of thumb detail there. There's still something there. Let's see. So we have this crack to remove now, which should be pretty straightforward at this point. Oh, that's right. I wasn't sure what to do with it because I wasn't really sure how it fit in with the rest of things around it, but I don't know. We'll just go with it. We'll see. Again, judgment call. This young individual. Oh, actually too much. I'm kind of losing my definition. It's tough. Wow. Really tough, actually. I need to get the face, like, if I do that, it's going to remove, like, any definition. Well, a lot of these people don't have a ton of shadow on the lower half. Let me see if I can get away with this. Sorry, I'll speak up a bit. Let me see if I can get away with this. Using the patch tool to my advantage to try to like blur some of those transitions. Yeah, see, this is where it's tough. This is where it helps to have a reference because like I don't know how wide this child's chin actually is. I can tell you that that's probably wrong. Like right here, if you follow this line and it comes out over here like this, if that's even his chin, it could be like, one of these stains or dark spots, but it kind of comes down and over. Whereas the way I did it, it comes down a little too far. So we need to tuck some of this back up in here. That's a bit more believable as a young human face. Kind of a chiseled Popeye jaw. Not chiseled, but a bit of a Popeye jaw going on, but a little scowl. Better than it was, though. Wow. That's almost everybody's face. Couple of things that I'm not 100% sure how to handle. I mean, this shouldn't be too bad. It's just like a crack, but there's a little dark spot through this man's face. And then this here, which I can take care of, but not gonna lie. All right, so we have like these couple of dark spots here, which again, I'm gonna kind of see what happens when I start throwing some curves over top of this. So of all the things that I've fixed in this is kind of the thing that's getting me, is this thing. I mean, it's completely covering the tie, covers the hair. From back here, it doesn't look too bad, but when you start zooming in, you just sort of start to wonder what the hell is going on with it. But just notice these little cracks here. These can be addressed very easily. Okay, I don't like that. I don't like that. So I find that the patch tool does that a lot because it doesn't treat borders all that well. It also... I could select here. I'm going to probably freehand it though, just because it just feels more right. I think a selection... I mean, okay. A major part of being good at Photoshop is being good at selections and being able to control your selections. There are certain selections that are very difficult. There are some that are very easy, and they're very powerful selection tools and tweaking tools in Photoshop. It was great when they started really adding those like refinement tools, because that was really the crux of it. Like, you could get an okay selection, but then like, after the fact, there wasn't anything you could do about it. If you just weren't quite happy with it, you'd have to either start all over again or just be happy with that as a starting point and then go in and refine things by hand, which sucked. Definitely have done it, but it sucks. I feel like still though, a lot of times it's like a Photoshop selection still looks like a Photoshop selection. Still just looks like... Sorry, it still just looks like the best the software could do. Sometimes I think I still prefer to freehand it. See, this is where breaks are good. I may actually take one in a moment, grab a little water, come back to it. But, with all the challenges I've had to overcome for this image, I really genuinely did not think it would be, brown goop on a person's face that would be like the crux of this route for the day. But it is. Here we are. Ugh, and you're getting those stupid clone patterns that I hate. They're so obvious. They remind me of those like 3D vision books and posters and stuff that like said you just have to relax your eyes and see past it, and the images overlap and it creates some 3D shape, and I could never make them work like that. I mean, now I think I can, but I always cheated where I just crossed my eyes at them because it did the same thing, just in the different direction. And then, you'd see the stupid repeating cutout of a dinosaur or whatever, and, that was that. I mean, they were neat when you were a kid. I still think they're kind of neat in a way, but They take advantage of that optical illusion. But that's what it always reminds me of, except there's just no weird shape or anything. No thing in that. But that's where like the patch tool is our friend. That's kind of bad. I don't think I like that. Then again, I stuck to the original outline of the hair. It just sticks out too much. Just keep working on it. Okay. I mean, there's this, but again, I'm going to try to burn some of that in. I said that with this, I wasn't going to like patch tool that up because I didn't want to mess with his face too much, but seriously, I did it with all these other faces, not even really thinking about it. So let's see if I can't just like blend that a little better. It's a decent blend. That's actually, I'm happy with that. Yeah. Okay. Give it a save. I forgot about this side. Well, this definitely needs to be fixed. So let's do it. I'm going to give those back on a keystroke. Opacity a little. All right, so we want to line the crook of the neck up with the existing crook of the neck. Because remember, some of that's actually there from the original. So the face is actually pretty decent. I'm going to take this, and now we're going to use a mask. First time this entire video. Okay, color some of that out. Definitely going to color the neck area out until that merges in, which is nice. Color you out. Okay, just like that. I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. Okay, I'm just going to hide this. It's not erasing, it's different than erasing. We're just going to hide this until we see our gap. There's our gap. So I'm just going to bring that back in, bring it up to there. Okay, and then we'll take it away from here until I see a gap and just a little one right there. So we'll fix that. All right. Minimal. Take it out. Okay. Do you think it could just be a touch darker? Just ever so slightly. Okay. Crack, fixed, merged. So make a new folder and call this just, I just always just call it like working layers or something. Then what I can do is outside of that, when I do curves, I'm going to call this, let's call it master luminosity. And I'm going to change it to luminosity. All right. We're going to make a new adjustment layer. I'm going to call it, where's my black and white? I'll call it black and white. It's going to actually go underneath. And we're going to go master black and white. We're not going to look to this to do anything else except take the color cast out. Also, yet again, forgot to take care of this crack. So let's hide these. And let's stamp. See, and this is kind of what I mean about like artificially adding this stuff versus not artificially adding it and it coming out better if you don't artificially add it. But sometimes it just doesn't cooperate at all. Like this to me, now that like we have the white platen away from it and stuff, like this looks like overdone. The yellow looks oversaturated. Just the color itself looks too contrasty. The color looks punchy. And then to have to ask a printer to reproduce this in a way that looks like it actually is an antiqued print, it can be done, you know, but to be done in a way that actually like does the original justice is a different matter entirely. You can see a lot of antiquing effects out there that are super easy. I mean, just add like a yellow cast to something, or to really just kind of beat up an image or whatever. Like that's fine, but we're trying our best to like keep the idea that this is an antique photograph. And it's just tough. It's tricky to do that with how yellow this looks right now. It's like just too saturated. So also we already saw it black and white, which also messed with things. So we're going to do this. And this also, like without knowing exactly where this client is going to have this printed and all that stuff, like I calibrate my monitor and I just get this within, check the histogram, you get this within your sRGB color space, and typically most places that they're going to go to get anything printed are going to print there, or print within that color space. So we're just going to do our best to try to bring some of that in. So I forgot about our masquerade face, but that's also going to be some dodging and burning. I did a curves, but I think I actually want to start with levels. Let's start with levels. We'll do master level loom, because again, we only want to affect the luminosity, but I mean, right now we have no color anyway, so. All right, I'm going to sample a white point. And this is where like I'm going to dial some of this back as well, because, if you go true like digital photography level, like white point and black point, this print does not have that kind of range. So to ask it to be that and to do that is just asking too much of it, which actually with the white in the background, and this is actually when I scan stuff, my initial color correction, I set that as the white point because these aren't white. This is an antique print. It has some luminosity value. This isn't pure paper white. But in the interest of control, we are going to bring it back to that, bring the contrast back to that, and then go from there. So what's the darkest thing in this image? It's probably right down in here. I mean, you could argue that this should be black or this should be black because it recedes, but I mean, I want to do like a true, like blackest black I can find, and it's that. So knowing that, now I'm going to play. So take it like this. I mean, you could go really extreme with it, but I don't like that. I mean, it looks a lot clearer, but it's just sort of a disingenuous reproduction. I mean, it'd be like if you're trying not to leave your own signature style on stuff if you can avoid it. So increasing the midtones like this, increasing contrast in the midtones. Need to open up my blacks. See, what I'm trying to account for is the oxidation in here and in here. But I think that's going to have to be a spot burn because I do not like how punchy that looks. So let's back up. we want to make sure we're preserving as much detail as we can. I mean, there is detail somewhere in here. It helps sometimes to make the print small, or the image small. So I could go here and it just looks really washed out. But then like over here, obviously it's just like way too much. Go with this. I mean, look where we are versus where we were. So this is, again, kind of a stylistic thing. This client gave me some flexibility with, the look, but also like they wanted it to still look like an old print, and that just to me doesn't look like an old print. So what we might do, I might reset this. I'm actually going to start with my curves layer now. This is what a lot of this stuff is too. There's a lot of experimentation that goes into this. So we're going to take like this here. I mean, this is obviously like our darkest dark. Okay, these are some of our whitest whites, right? Like we'll give ourselves like a nice little contrast curve. Kind of loosen that a little bit. Or what I can actually do is I can treat this just like levels. Bring my white point in, just past the point of clipping. My black point. That kind of gives us our similar starting point, but it's a little easier to recover. All right, we'll go and we'll individually sample like this gentleman here. Like his suit to be a little bit of a higher quality. See what we did to the yellow by doing all that? Very tough. This is sort of our paper yellow, but I mean, it's even looking a little red here, like looking a little magenta. It's going to take some work. So what I think I'm actually going to do, realistically, is I am going to antique this manually. But in the meantime, myself a new dodge and burn layer. And take out my brush. I'll actually back this off a little bit because I want to go kind of big and global. Turn my flow way down. Okay, and again, we're trying to treat some of this oxidation. And it's okay if I go a little heavy-handed with this, because I'm just going to come back and I can adjust it because it's on its own layer. And it might look a little funky or whatever. This looks like it could have been like a Christmas tree farm or something. There's a lot of like conifers in there. Here, is there an individual here? Is there a person here? Can't tell. So we're going to say no. Okay, and I'm going to smooth this out too and use some blurring and stuff to like, because again, I am doing this by hand, so it's not like 100% perfect. And it's sort of a Band-Aid fix. Once your original has been oxidized, like I don't know if it's realistic to expect that you could clean it or not. I would like to hope yes. I mean, you can clean tarnished jewelry and things, but I would think anything you'd clean tarnished silver with over something like this would also significantly degrade the paper that it's printed on and might actually cause a lot of issues. So see, now you can tell it's like a bag hanging back there. I didn't know what that was. It looked like some Assassin's Creed hood or something. We've got this weird face over here, and we've got an Assassin's Creed thing going on over here. So down here, work on this a bit. Gaussian blur. Just want to try to even out some of the high spots. All right, so I'm gonna start feathering this a bit. But yeah, where I take some of these and like I do like a modern day retouch over some of them. Just think it'd be an interesting take, I guess. Just try to open these guys up a little bit. It's just not quite so blotchy, you know? Again, there's probably, yeah, could I have done a selection around this, and dropped a curves layer in and, done a lot of stuff with that? Yeah. But I'm still not confident it would have been the best call. Could still do it. Still give it a go. But again, like, we're losing so much detail in here. I'm just making dark spots. So, what are you going to do? All right. So that's that. So actually, this looks kind of heavy to me. And again, we're going to back it up. Right? But if you look at areas that were not oxidized, actually, if you look at an area that wasn't oxidized, it's this and it's black. But no. But see, as we go, like, this feels even to me, even if it's not perfect. All right, so we're going to make another dodge and burn layer. We're going to call this dodge and burn peoples. I'm not going to go nuts here. Again, I'm just going to try to bring a little bit of definition back in to some of these areas that are super low contrast. Little kid's face, her nose a little hot there. His hair, and like, we don't want him to be like too contrasty, but her, she's definitely a little ghostly looking. This guy right here. Let's see if we can bring some detail back out in him. Contrast there. Just got a little bit of her dress. See? Just do a little bit of that. Same with this. Just painting a little bit of it back in. But again, I don't want to go, I don't want to risk changing their features too much. I don't want to invent anything that's not already there. You want to try to work as best you can with what's already there and nothing else. Still a little creepy, not gonna lie. Maybe not my best work here. I'm talking about like taking figure drawing and how that's helped, because it helps you figure out how faces look and things like that. But like, also that's terrifying. All right, so we're gonna do a thing. We take this. All right, we're gonna go like this. We're gonna draw a little square. We're gonna go like this. Copy based on the background. I'm just gonna call it swatch. Okay, we're gonna put the swatch all the way at the top. swatch is our color. We're going to try to bring that back in. All right, filter, blur it. You know what? Nope. So filter. Average, yes, okay. So it averages all the pixel data in there. So now we've got like no noise, no nothing. It's just a pure color swatch. Okay. I'm going to do a new color overlay. Solid color, I guess. Of course, and it's under the swatch layer. Excuse me. So we'll do solid color, and let's sample that. Let's hit OK. We can hide our swatch. We're going to go like this. We're going to cycle through some blend modes. I don't know if it'll be color or hue. See, color's okay, but it still kind of gets a little tinny, you know? So then we just drop the opacity back. You know, I just always get that feeling. Just like, maybe it's because these are more luminous now. But I always want to bring it back a bit. The yellows always end up being a bit more saturated. And I actually do think I want to take back. I mean, that is a big part of it, of making a print look antiqued, is your black points. So what if I actually took this? So we're trying to raise our black point though, but just a little bit. Yeah, see, that softens it just a hair. I mean, we don't want it to look faded. We're restoring it. So now we save it. And I'm actually going to now sample this to where we want it to go. So we'll go like this. So we're going to go like this. And I know I want this to be 10 inches wide. Inches by 10. I'm going to resample this. I'm going to save it. I do 360 because oftentimes I end up on Epson printers, and Epson printers actually prefer 360 to 300 DPI, but I mean 300 is great and it'll work great too. So normally I would do bicubic sharper for a reduction, but you can see it's sharpening my grain. So if I do bicubic smoother, it doesn't sharpen my grain, versus sharper does sharpen my grain. I could do preserve details and reduce noise. See, and that's something that yeah, no, don't like that. You know, I could have run a noise reduction over this, but that's going to print so fine. It shouldn't be a big deal. See, I don't like any of those. Smoother. Smoother's definitely the way to go here. Okay, so we've now resampled that to be a good, solid 8x10 size. So let's see the difference now when I try to go pixel deep. This is as deep as it lets me get, which is pretty good. So if I had been trying to work at some of the detail levels I had been working, I mean, I would have had far less detail to work with in comparison. Yeah, and actually now that I have it here, do one last hurrah. There's not much detail there anyway. All right, my DB people. That I'm still keeping. Okay. So from here, I'd save it in my various print copies, and I'd call the client and tell them that their stuff is ready to go, and we would arrange a pickup time and pickup date. Once again, here's what we started with. We started with this. Back off a bit. Pretty severely damaged. this. Bit of a judgment call as to which is better. The client, like I know that these whites will fill in with our paper white, although they aren't fully clipped. So, if they choose a nice antique paper, which I would try to steer them toward, should make for a very, very nice antique looking print. And honestly too, this antiquing layer here, I will probably continue to tweak as the day goes on. Like, see, it looks a little better like that, but that's about where I already had it. So anyway, thank you for tuning in to this 5-hour process. We will catch you for the next one.